Today's project, we're doing a brake upgrade on the Drag Week Chevelle. No, it's not the only Chevelle that runs on Drag Week, but it is the Drag Week Chevelle. Anyway, did a wheel upgrade, and along with the wheels, they came with special lug nuts, and I bought the lug nuts only to fit the new brakes, so I couldn't put them on with the old brakes. So anyway, this is the TBM brake kit I got. They recommended a 4-piston caliper because I have rear drum. So that side's on, kind of a learning process that I did. I'm gonna show you how this side goes today, and that's the last of that old wheel. You get these guys on there. But I'll show you what I did wrong, and I fixed it already. But they sell these rotors unassembled, and they got this little cutout here for the bolt, but I had it flipped over where that little cutout I thought was clearance for the spindle, and then when I put it all together, it was like 1/2 inch off, and like the outer pad was rubbing real hard, the inner pad was real far away. So I flipped the rotors over, seemed to have fixed it. So we're gonna put the passenger side together, hook up the lines and bleed it. If you're wondering why on earth would you need brakes like that, well, it needed brakes anyway, so I thought we'd try something that may be a little bit more durable. This is a set of green stuff pads. They've been on the car since 2013. They're pretty worn out. Anyway, and then this was a set of just probably Chinese rotors, but they're cracked pretty much at every hole. So anyway, I figured the car was just a little bit too much abuse to put another set of stock brakes on it. That car over there has stock brakes on it. They've been on there since 1969, and it even has a set of used rotors that are from probably 1970, 71 or something like that. Anyway, so I'm gonna get this other wheel off over here, and we'll get this thing apart. All right, the wheel's off. First thing we're gonna do is take the 2 caliper bolts off, which should be like a 5/16 Allen, maybe a 3/8. 3/8 Allen. All right, first thing we got to do, we need our 3/8 Allen to get the caliper off. I'm gonna buzz those off and just let it hang there, and then we'll slide that rotor off. Backing plate, I'm guessing you don't need it, so I took it off the other side. I don't see other people using them, but sometimes they got these little locking tabs on them. Bend that out of the way. And then this caliper bracket has to come off, and that's held on by these 2 bolts and this big bolt. So big bolt. One big bolt, and then these other bolts are 3/4, and they go through with a nut on the other side, and it holds that steering arm on. All right, obviously the caliper bracket comes off, and backing plate. So I'm gonna clean this up real quick just to make it look pretty. Okay, wiped clean. If it looks insanely clean, it's because I powder coated these before I put them on. I think they've been on the car since 2011, something like that. The original spindles off of a 70 Chevelle. I bought it at a swap meet. I think I got a pretty good deal on them. I don't remember though. Anyway, so we're going to reuse the steering arm and the stock disc brake spindle. This here is the only difference between a disc brake and a drum brake spindle is this sticks out, I think, even with that. But since it's a disc brake spindle, this is set back. So you got this bracket, which I assume works for disc or drum. But what they're going to do is they're going to give you a spacer. So this bolt's here and here, and see there's a big gap in here. So there's a big Allen bolt that goes in there with the spacer, and then there's another Allen bolt that goes through here through the steering arm. It came in the kit. Here, I'll lift this up here. I kind of made a mess of it, but they put this together nicely with this little bags and all the little bolts and stuff that you'll need and shims. Anyway, that long bolt and a big giant fat bolt is what we're going to use. So, let me set this back up. All right, spacer, big giant Allen bolt. It goes in the top here. And then we've got this extremely too long bolt, goes in here, and it goes through the steering arm. Yeah, somehow. Like that. Came with a lock nut and a washer. Put the washer on there and the lock nut. And then I think we retain the factory bolt in the front, which I don't remember which one it was. There's two different lengths. Let's see if the short one fits. Short one seems to work. And I got a factory lock washer, lock nut for that one. Anyway, I'm gonna tighten that big giant one. Somewhere around here was a big, okay, duh, that's the same 3/8 Allen I used to pull a caliper bolt out. Anyway, that's pretty tight. This one's a smaller Allen. I think that's a 5/16. That's pretty much it for the mounting of the bracket. I just got to put a rotor on there, and then the caliper, and then on to the next phase. So I'm going to smear a little grease around here, slide the rotor on. Bearings are already packed. I packed them at the shop, but let me go grab a rotor. All right, that took like 2 seconds. So I got the rotor on there, and the bearings and everything that came with it. Did not come with this bearing washer, so I'm assuming since it's a stock spindle, we're using the original bearing washer and the original castle nut. So I'm gonna put that together just like I would if I was putting an original rotor on. And everybody's got a different way of tightening these. I'll show you my way. But you don't need a socket or any giant thing on there. I pretty much just tighten it till it's about as tight as I can get it. Then I spin it. Very hard to spin, but I make sure the bearings are seated, and then I back it off, spin it, and then I just tighten it till I feel some drag. Now at this point, there's a hole somewhere in here for a cotter pin. I can go a little tighter, a little looser, but somewhere around there we want to find a hole for a cotter pin. And there it is. So let me go get a new cotter pin and I'll stick that together. All right, so here at the Big G Garage, I am slightly limited on parts. So I got this gigantic cotter pin, but that's all right. We'll just stick it in there and cut it. This is all stuff that I brought home from work over the years for various other projects or something. And had some spares laying around, and that's how I get stock stuff here. I do my cotter pins different than most people do. I just bend it out like that. I cut this piece off, watch your eyes. I went all the way across the garage, and then I cut this one off like that. Good enough, it's not going anywhere. Now, TBM doesn't use a smack-on dust cap. It uses this little dust cap, which is a screw-on, which is super cool, but I can imagine lots of problems with a screw-on dust cap. One is it's going to want to unscrew itself. Two, it's going to want to tighten itself to the point where you can't ever get it off. So I don't even know how tight to make this. So I'm just going to stick it on there and just kind of tighten it by hand. But that's all there is to putting the rotor on. Caliper is pretty much the same way. Let me go grab the caliper. All right, here's the caliper. Super cool looking. Couple things I learned yesterday. This retaining bolt holds the pads from coming out. So to get the pads out, all you gotta do is take that bolt out and they come out. Now, wouldn't you think that the pad would have a hole in it for that? Seems kind of silly that it doesn't, but it doesn't. So everybody else that uses a bolt like that runs it through the pad, but one thing I learned yesterday is you can load these pads from the bottom and you don't even have to take that bolt out. Anyway, sits in there like that. The bolt kind of rubs against it. I'll make sure the bolt's tight, but again, kind of odd. I think that's like a 5/16 or an 8 millimeter. Yeah, that's tight. So anyway, bleeder up, and then we get 2 bolts for that came in the kit. Okay, 2 fine thread Allen bolts. The instructions said to put the lock washer on, then the flat washer, and mount them that way. I wouldn't normally put that many washers on, but that's what they recommended, so we're gonna do it. When you do that though, you end up with a bolt that's extremely short. I don't know if you can see that, but there's only a couple threads there. So my opinion, I would ditch one of the washers, but that's the way they wanted it. That's the way we'll do it. All right, got that tight. I'm gonna go get a brake hose and I'm gonna try to get it to fit in this factory bracket over here. It came with a bracket, but their bracket's really small and kind of weird. So if it doesn't fit in a factory bracket, I might grind it out a little bit and see if it fits. They got lots of shims came in this kit. I guess the shims, you could shim the caliper out, shim the bracket back and forth, but Anyway, everything lined up pretty good. I didn't really see a need for shims. Alright, so here's the hose that came with, cool little braided guy. And I already put this fitting on the end that'll fit to the factory 3/16 metal brake line. So we'll loosen up this metal line. Well, that came loose nice. Of course, we're going to leak brake fluid everywhere. Needle nose vice grips is usually the best tool to get this clip out. That's out. So, does it fit in the hole? Oh yeah, look at that. So, we're just gonna hook it in here like that. Maybe we need to use their bracket because it looks like the factory bracket might be too thick, but let's see. Yeah, and that bracket really sucks too. It looks like it's a welded thing. It can't be much. Yeah, we're gonna try it. Maybe we'll get a little hammer out here and see if we can persuade it in there. Yeah, that's not gonna work. We're gonna probably have to use their little bracket. Well, here's something I noticed. The factory bracket is folded over and it's double thick. If you can see that. Anyway, this is their bracket, which seems to be about the same thickness. In fact, if I grab the other one, stick these both together. Oh yeah, exactly the same. I don't know if you can see that, but that's exactly the same thickness folded over. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this factory bracket off at the end here and just make it single thick, and I'm gonna put the factory one back on because this one here, A, I'm gonna have to paint it, B, I gotta drill holes in it. That's a whole lot of work just to do the same thing that we're already doing. So let me cut that off and we'll stick this thing back together. Look at that. Factory bracket, thick enough to run Cincy aftermarket brake hose. I'm going to touch this up on the grinder a little bit and we'll go back to the car. Alright. Cut, rounded off. Ready to stick this clippy back in there. There we go, it's nice and solid. Let's see, I probably should hold that with something. Well, it looks like it's in. Not leaking anything. Tighten it up here. I think they made these a little on the long side. I don't know what to do with that, but maybe we'll get some shorter ones another day. And that is, wow, 1/4 inch bleeder. Right, I'm gonna crack the bleeder open and let this thing fill full of fluid. Now the fluid that's in the car is not what they recommend, so I'm gonna kind of let that bleed out, and then we're gonna fill it with their recommended fluid. What you gotta do is bleed it with the help of my lovely assistant, Sheila. She is going to be the master pedal pusher. Will you turn the steering wheel like all the way to the left?
Is it?
Yeah, keep going. Look how crazy long that brake hose is. All right, push it down and hold it. Ooh, nice and fluidy. Okay, let up. Push it down and hold it. I hope this went the right way. All right, let up. Thank you, lovely helper assistant. Now I have to do is put the wheels on and fill it up with their special TBM Extreme 6 high performance racing brake fluid. Kind of looks cool. I don't know. We didn't get them for the looks. We just hope they work.